Fleet Commander Zavesh stood on the observation deck of the Eternal Reach, watching the stars shift as the ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Behind his vessel, 2 more colony ships and 4 escort cruisers followed, their hulls gleaming in the light of distant suns. This was the 5th expansion wave the Cathari Collective had launched in the past century, and Zavesh felt the same pride he always did when leading his people into new territory. The region ahead looked promising on every scan. Dozens of star systems with habitable worlds, rich mineral deposits, stable stellar formations, and most importantly, no other civilizations to negotiate with or avoid. The ancient charts called this area the Quiet Expanse, and the name fit perfectly. For thousands of light years in every direction, their long-range sensors picked up nothing but empty space and silent worlds. "Commander, we're approaching the first designated colony site," his navigation officer announced. Her tail swished with excitement, the blue scales catching the light. "Planet KE-447, atmosphere compatible with minimal terraforming. 2 moons, both with valuable mineral deposits." Zavesh nodded his approval. "Begin landing procedures. Science teams deploy first, then construction crews. I want atmospheric readings, biological surveys, and geological samples within 6 hours." The Eternal Reach settled into orbit around KE-447, a green and blue world that reminded Zavesh of the Cathari homeworld from ancient pictures. Before industrial expansion had covered most of the surface, this planet was pristine, untouched, ready for the collective to make it their own. The first shuttles descended, carrying scientific equipment and survey teams. Zavesh watched the feeds from his command chair, seeing his people step onto alien soil and begin their work. Everything proceeded smoothly. The air was breathable. The local life forms were small and non-threatening. The water was clean. It was perfect, too perfect perhaps. Something nagged at Zavesh's mind, but he couldn't identify what bothered him. 3 days later, the science team on the larger moon made a discovery. The communications officer patched through the lead scientist's excited voice. "Commander, you need to see this. We found structures." Artificial structures. Zavesh felt his chest tighten. Other civilizations meant complications, negotiations, possible conflicts. "Are they occupied? Any signals?" "No, sir. They're old, very old, and empty. Completely abandoned." Relief mixed with curiosity in Zavesh's mind. He took a shuttle down to the moon's surface, where his science team had set up equipment around a series of buildings half buried in lunar dust. The structures were clearly designed by intelligent beings. Smooth walls, precise angles, doorways shaped for creatures taller than the Cathari. But everything was dark, silent, dead. Dr. Corvus, the expedition's chief xenoarchaeologist, greeted Zavesh at the entrance to the largest structure. Her scanning equipment beeped and hummed as she worked. "Initial dating suggests these buildings are approximately 15,000 years old," she explained, her voice tight with professional excitement. "The architecture is sophisticated. Climate control systems, power generation, everything needed for a permanent settlement. But no bodies, no personal effects, no signs of what happened to the builders, war, plague," Zavesh asked. "No evidence of either. The structures are intact. No damage, no remains. It's as if everyone simply left, took their portable belongings and departed, but left the infrastructure behind." Zavesh walked through the empty corridors, his footsteps echoing in the silence. The walls still held faded markings that might have been writing. The rooms still contained furniture-like objects, though their purpose was unclear. Everything spoke of a living, functioning settlement that had been abandoned in an orderly fashion. Over the next week, as the Cathari established their own colony on KE-447, the science teams made more discoveries. Another settlement on a nearby asteroid, this one older, 30,000 years. Different architecture, different technology level, clearly built by a different species, also abandoned without explanation. Then another, and another. By the end of the first month, Dr. Corvus had documented 7 distinct civilizations that had built structures in this region of space. 7 different species, none of which the Cathari had ever encountered before. "All of them vanished without a trace, Commander. I need to show you something," Dr. Corvus said during a briefing on the Eternal Reach. She projected a star chart showing the locations of all the abandoned sites they'd found. "Look at the pattern. These settlements form a rough line, all pointing deeper into the expanse. Like a path of expansion, each civilization pushing further into this region before stopping. Perhaps they moved on, Zavesh's second officer suggested, expanded past this area into regions we haven't surveyed yet. Then why leave functioning infrastructure behind? Dr. Corvus countered. These weren't temporary outposts. These were meant to be permanent colonies. And look at the time gaps between them. Thousands of years between each civilization. If they'd succeeded, we should find evidence of their later expansion. But there's nothing. Just these initial colonies, then silence. Zavesh studied the chart, that nagging feeling returning stronger than before. Continue the surveys, but also analyze every piece of data. I want to know what happened to these people. Despite the mystery, the Cathari expansion continued. They had invested too much to turn back based on ancient ruins and unanswered questions. 2 more colony sites were established. Trade routes were mapped. Mining operations began on mineral-rich asteroids. The collective's territory grew, pushing deeper into the quiet expanse. It was during the 3rd month that the communications array picked up something different. Not silence, not ancient ruins, something active. Commander, we're detecting electromagnetic signals, the communications officer reported, her voice uncertain. Organized patterns, definitely artificial, coming from a star system approximately 15 light-years deeper into the expanse. Zavesh leaned forward in his command chair. Another civilization, still active unlike the ruins they'd been finding. Perhaps they would have answers about what happened to the others. Can you determine the source? Working on it, sir. The signals are unusual. Multiple frequencies, complex modulation. Whoever they are, they're technologically sophisticated. Preliminary analysis suggests they have settlements on multiple planets and numerous artificial satellites. And Commander, they're broadcasting what appears to be greeting messages in multiple languages. They know we're here? Either that or they broadcast to everyone. The messages repeat on a loop. Wait, translation algorithms are processing. I'm getting a partial decode. They call themselves humans. And they're saying welcome. Zavesh felt the scales along his spine prickle with unease. This region of space had swallowed 7 civilizations that they knew of, possibly more. Empty colonies and silent ruins stretched across dozens of star systems. And yet here, in the heart of the quiet expanse, was an active civilization calling themselves humans, broadcasting greetings to anyone who might be listening. The question that troubled Zavesh was simple. If this region was so dangerous that multiple civilizations had vanished here, why were the humans still alive? What made them different? Or more disturbing? What if they were the reason the others had disappeared? Send a response, Zavesh ordered, his voice steady despite his concerns. Standard diplomatic greeting. We come in peace and wish to establish contact. And prepare a full tactical alert. I want all ships ready for anything. The reply came faster than expected. The humans, it seemed, were very eager to meet them. The human ships arrived 3 weeks later, and they were nothing like Zavesh had expected. He had prepared for aggressive warships or massive colony vessels that would dwarf his fleet. Instead, 3 medium-sized craft dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Cathari's newest colony system. Their design sleek and efficient, but not particularly threatening. The lead ship transmitted identification codes and requested permission to approach. Everything followed standard diplomatic protocols that the humans shouldn't have known but somehow did. Zavesh granted permission, though he kept his escort cruisers on high alert. When the human ambassador came aboard the Eternal Reach, Zavesh got his first look at the species that lived where others had died. Humans stood on 2 legs, had bilateral symmetry like the Cathariae, and possessed 2 arms ending in 5-fingered hands. Their faces were flat with forward-facing eyes, and they had skin in various shades of brown and pink instead of scales. They looked almost fragile compared to the Cathari's armored hides, but their eyes were sharp, alert, constantly observing. Fleet Commander Zavesh, the ambassador said through a translation device that worked remarkably well. I'm Ambassador Sarah Chen. On behalf of humanity, I want to express how delighted we are to meet you. We've been alone out here for so long. Her smile seemed genuine, warm even. Zavesh found himself relaxing slightly despite his caution. Ambassador Chen, the Cathari Collective is pleased to make contact with your people. We have many questions, as do we, Sarah said. Perhaps we can learn from each other. We've prepared information about human territory, our culture, and our technology. We're hoping to establish trade relations and cultural exchange programs. We have much to offer each other. Over the following weeks, the diplomatic process unfolded smoothly. Too smoothly, Zavesh thought sometimes, though he couldn't identify any specific problem. The humans were cooperative, friendly, and generous with information. They shared star charts showing their territory, approximately 200 star systems clustered in the deeper regions of the expanse. They explained their history. Humanity had been spacefaring for only 4 centuries, expanding slowly and carefully from their homeworld called Earth. The Cathari science teams met with human scientists and found them brilliant, but not superior. Their technology was impressive but similar in capability to Cathari achievements. They had faster-than-light drives, energy weapons, advanced material science, artificial intelligence, everything expected of a spacefaring civilization. Nothing mysterious or threatening. Trade agreements were drafted. Cultural exchange programs were proposed. The humans even invited a Cathari research delegation to visit Earth itself, to see the human homeworld and establish an embassy. It all seemed perfectly normal, except for the abandoned colonies. Zavesh raised the issue during a formal dinner with Ambassador Chen on the Eternal Reach. The meal featured both Cathari and human foods, and Sarah had been enthusiastically trying various Cathari dishes. Ambassador, we've discovered numerous abandoned settlements in this region, Zavesh said carefully. At least 7 different civilizations, possibly more. All of them vanished without explanation. Have your people encountered similar findings? Sarah's expression didn't change, but Zavesh noticed a slight pause before she answered. Just a fraction of a second, but it was there. We've found some ruins, yes, she said. Space is vast, Commander. Civilizations rise and fall for countless reasons. Economic collapse, plague, war, resource depletion. Sometimes species simply move on to other regions and abandon their early colonies. All of them. With no records, no messages, no explanation? It is unusual, Sarah admitted. But the universe is full of mysteries. Perhaps in time, together, we can solve some of them. The conversation moved on to other topics, but Zavesh couldn't shake the feeling that Sarah knew more than she was saying. Not lying exactly, but carefully avoiding certain truths. The research delegation to Earth departed a month later. Dr. Renval, the young xenoarchaeologist who had been studying the abandoned settlements, led the team. Zavesh watched their ship leave, hoping they would find answers on the human homeworld. Earth was beautiful. Dr. Renval stood in a viewing area of the orbital station where the Cathari delegation was housed, staring down at the blue and white planet below. Oceans covered most of the surface. Clouds swirled in complex patterns. Lights from human cities dotted the night side, twinkling like ground-bound stars. The humans had been gracious hosts. They provided tours of their cities, their museums, their universities. Dr. Renval saw human art and music, learned about their literature and philosophy. She met human children who asked excited questions about Cathari culture. She attended lectures about human history and scientific achievements, but something felt wrong. She couldn't identify it at first, a vague unease that grew stronger the longer she stayed. It was in the museums that she started to understand. Earth's history was violent in ways that shocked her. Humans had fought countless wars, some spanning their entire planet. They had nearly destroyed themselves multiple times with weapons of mass destruction. Their path to space hadn't been driven by curiosity or the joy of exploration, but by competition and fear of falling behind their rivals. One museum was dedicated to what humans called the survival era, a 300-year period of repeated global crises. Economic collapses, climate catastrophes, resource wars, pandemics. The exhibits showed humans enduring suffering that would have broken most civilizations. But they didn't break. They adapted, rebuilt, persisted. We're a stubborn species, her human guide said with a slight smile. When the universe pushes us down, we get back up. Every single time. Dr. Renval noticed similar themes throughout human culture. Their entertainment featured stories of overcoming impossible odds. Their monuments celebrated persistence and survival. Their philosophy emphasized resilience and adaptation. Even their humor often involved making light of disasters and hardships. These weren't the cultural markers of a peaceful, exploratory civilization. These were the traits of a species that had fought for every bit of progress. A species shaped by constant struggle, But why? The Cathari had faced challenges too, but nothing like the relentless cascade of disasters that seemed to mark human history. It was as if the universe itself had been trying to prevent humanity from reaching space. Dr. Renval spent her evenings researching in the database access the humans had provided. Most of it was unrestricted, human history, culture, science, everything openly shared. But her searches kept hitting certain blocked areas. Files marked as restricted, data that required special permissions. As a scientist, restricted data was irresistible. She began probing carefully, using techniques she had learned during her studies. The human security systems were good, but they weren't perfect. After 2 weeks of careful work, she found a gap in the permission system and slipped through. What she found made her blood run cold. The humans had been surveying the quiet expanse for 2 centuries. They had cataloged every abandoned settlement the Cathari had found, plus dozens more. They had detailed analyses of the architecture, the technology, the timelines, and they had reached conclusions. 43 distinct civilizations had entered this region of space over the past 100,000 years. Every single one had established colonies, built infrastructure, begun expanding their territory, and every single one had gone silent within 500 to 3,000 years of arrival. The human researchers had created models, run simulations, analyzed patterns. Their conclusion was marked with the highest security classification, Encounter Protocol Sigma. The quiet expanse wasn't empty because civilizations had left. It was empty because something eliminated them. Something that was still here. Still active. Still waiting. And humanity knew about it. Dr. Renval's hands trembled as she copied the files to a secure drive. She needed to warn Fleet Commander Zevesh immediately. The Cathari had to leave this region before. Dr. Renval, we need to talk. She spun around. A human stood in her doorway, a middle-aged man in a simple suit. He wasn't threatening, wasn't even armed that she could see. But his expression was serious, and 2 security officers stood in the corridor behind him. My name is Dr. Marcus Chen, the man said quietly. I'm with Human Strategic Security. And yes, we know you accessed the restricted files. We've been waiting for someone to look, because it's time we had a conversation about what really happened to the others. Dr. Renval sat in a comfortable chair in a room that was clearly designed to be calming. Soft lighting, pleasant colors, even some Cathari-style furniture that the humans must have fabricated specifically for this conversation. But despite the comfortable surroundings, she knew she was being detained. The door had locked behind Dr. Marcus Chen when he entered, and the 2 security officers remained outside. Marcus sat across from her, his posture relaxed but his eyes sharp. He had brought 2 cups of a hot beverage that smelled pleasant, offering one to her. She didn't take it. You're not in trouble, Dr. Renval, Marcus said gently. Actually, we're grateful you looked. It saves us from having to decide when to tell you. Tell me what? Her voice came out steadier than she felt. That you've been lying to us? That you know exactly what happened to the 43 civilizations that died in this region? We haven't lied. We've been careful with the truth, yes, but we never claimed we didn't know about the ruins. Your commander didn't ask the right questions. Marcus took a sip from his cup. And we don't know exactly what happened. We have a theory. A well-supported theory, but still just a theory. Then explain it to me. Marcus was quiet for a moment, seeming to gather his thoughts. When he spoke, his voice was measured and careful. 600 years ago, humanity was pre-industrial. We had agriculture, basic metallurgy, sailing ships. We were divided into hundreds of separate nations and cultures. We had no idea that other species existed in the universe. We were alone on our planet, completely isolated. Dr. Renval nodded. This matched the human history she'd studied. Then something came, Marcus continued. We call it the presence because we still don't have a better name. It wasn't a ship or a civilization or anything we could see or touch. It was a phenomenon, an effect, and it started destroying human civilization. What do you mean, destroying? The files mentioned elimination, but not with weapons, Marcus interrupted. Not with armies or bombs or biological agents. The presence was subtle, insidious. Things just started failing. Crops failed more often. Diseases became harder to cure. Weather patterns destabilized. Resources became harder to find and process. Technology that had worked for centuries suddenly became unreliable. He leaned forward, his expression intense. At first, we thought it was natural. Bad luck, climate change, normal historical cycles. But the failures were too consistent, too widespread. Every time human civilization started to advance, something pushed it back. For 300 years, we were caught in a cycle of progress and collapse. We'd develop better agriculture, then face unprecedented droughts. We'd improve our medicine, then new plagues would emerge. We'd begin to industrialize, then our resources would fail. Dr. Renval felt her scales prickling with unease. But you survived. You're here now, in space. Yes. And that's what makes humanity different. Marcus's voice held a note of something. Pride mixed with bitterness. We don't know if it was luck or stubbornness or something unique about human psychology. But we fought it. We didn't understand what we were fighting for most of that time. We just thought the universe was harder than it should be. That progress required more effort than it seemed to require for other species in our historical theories. Every time our civilizations collapsed, we rebuilt them. Every time our technology failed, we redesigned it with backups and redundancies. Every time resources ran out, we found alternatives or learned to use less. We became very, very good at surviving when we should have died. He pulled up a display on a tablet and showed her graphs and data. It took us nearly 200 years after we reached space to figure out what had actually happened. We developed sensors that could detect the presence, a kind of field effect that interferes with complex systems. It's still active, Dr. Renval. Still monitoring this region of space. Still watching. Dr. Renval stared at the data, her mind racing. You're saying there's some kind of weapon defense system? Something that attacks civilizations that enter this region? We think so. The pattern is clear in the archaeological record. Every civilization that entered the quiet expanse eventually triggered the presence. It would activate and begin systematically dismantling their ability to maintain spaceflight. Ships would fail. Colonies would collapse. Technology would degrade, not through direct destruction, but through an escalating cascade of failures that made advanced civilization unsustainable. Within a few generations, every species regressed to pre-industrial levels or went extinct entirely. The abandoned settlements you found? Those were built during the early stages, before the presence fully activated. By the time it finished, there was nothing left but empty buildings and silence. The horror of it settled over Dr. Renval like a weight. 43 civilizations, countless billions of individuals, all of them slowly choked out of existence by something they couldn't see or fight. But humanity was different, she said slowly. You were pre-industrial when it activated, so it tried to stop you before you could reach space? Exactly. And it almost worked. We nearly went extinct several times, but we didn't. We survived through sheer bloody-mindedness. We learned to work with failing systems. We built redundancy into everything. We became very, very good at persistence. Marcus's expression was grim. Eventually, we reached space despite the presence trying to stop us. And once we had sensors that could detect it, we started learning, understanding how it worked, what triggered it, how to resist its effects. It took another century of research, but we figured out how to make it stop targeting us. How? By proving we could survive it. The presence seems to have some kind of intelligence, or at least a programmed response system. Once humanity demonstrated that we could maintain spaceflight despite its interference, it backed off. It still monitors us, but it doesn't actively try to destroy us anymore. Dr. Renval felt sick. And now my people are here, in this region. Does that mean? Yes, Marcus said quietly. The presence has detected the Cathari. It's already begun the activation sequence. We've been monitoring it since your fleet arrived. In approximately 6 months, it will reach full intensity. The room seemed to spin around Dr. Renval. Her people, her civilization. Everything she knew and loved was about to face the same extinction that had claimed 43 other species. You have to help us, she said desperately. You know how it works. You survived it. You have to tell us how to fight it. That's why we're having this conversation, Marcus replied. But Dr. Renval, you need to understand something. The only way to survive the presence is to endure it, to experience the cascade failures and keep rebuilding. To watch your civilization brought to the brink of collapse again and again and choose to persist anyway. We can share our research. We can give you techniques that helped us. We can show you how to build systems that resist the interference. But there's no shortcut. The presence won't stop until it confirms that your species can survive its attention. That process took humanity 300 years and it killed billions of our people. Dr. Renval's hands clenched into fists. You're saying you can help us but only by letting my people suffer? I'm saying we can improve your odds. Maybe cut the tempering time in half. Maybe reduce the casualties from billions to millions. But we can't make it painless. The presence won't allow that. What if we leave? If the Cathari retreat from this region right now, before it fully activates? Marcus's expression turned even more grave. We don't know. The presence might let you go, or it might pursue you, expanding its territory to follow the Cathari back to your own space. If that happens, it could threaten both our species, and potentially every other civilization in this part of the galaxy. Dr. Renval sat in silence, processing the impossible situation. Finally, she looked up at Marcus. I need to contact Fleet Commander Zavesh immediately. He has to know about this. We never blocked your communications, Marcus said. The files you copied? We'll transmit them along with your report, plus additional information we've prepared. Your commander is waiting for your call. He's been worried about you. You monitored my research the entire time. We had to know if you'd figure it out, and we had to be ready for this conversation. Marcus stood, moving toward the door. Dr. Renval, humanity doesn't want the Cathari to suffer. But we also don't want the presence to expand beyond this region. You have a choice to make. Actually, your entire civilization has a choice to make. And we'll support whatever you decide. The door unlocked. Dr. Renval was free to go. But she felt more trapped than ever. Fleet Commander Zavesh stared at the data streaming across his command screen, feeling his world collapse around him. Dr. Renval's report had arrived 3 hours ago, along with massive data packages from Human Strategic Security, everything Marcus Chen had told her, plus centuries of human research, sensor readings, analysis, and horrifying historical records. The evidence was overwhelming. The presence was real, it was active, and it had already begun targeting the Cathari. Show me the timeline again, Zavesh ordered his science officer. The display shifted to show a graph marked with dates and events. 6 months ago, the moment the first Cathari ships entered the quiet expanse. 5 months ago, initial activation detected by human sensors, though too subtle for Cathari equipment to notice. 4 months ago, cascade patterns beginning, still below detection threshold. 3 months ago, when they'd made contact with humanity. And 2 weeks ago, the presence had reached 30% activation. The failures would begin soon. Small things at first, easily explained away as normal mechanical issues or bad luck. Then larger failures, more frequent, more severe. The projection showed full activation in 4 months. After that, the cascade would accelerate until the Cathari either learned to resist it or collapsed completely. Commander, we're receiving a priority transmission from the human ambassador, his communications officer reported. She's requesting an emergency meeting. Put her through. Ambassador Sarah Chen's face appeared on the screen. She looked tired, as if she hadn't slept in days. Perhaps she hadn't. Commander Zavesh, I know you've received Dr. Renval's report. I'm sure you have questions. Questions? Zavesh heard his own voice crack with stress. You watched us walk into a death trap and said nothing. You smiled and offered trade agreements while my people faced extinction. I have more than questions, Ambassador. Sarah didn't flinch. You're right to be angry. We debated for months about what to do when you arrived. Some of us wanted to warn you immediately. Others argued that would just cause panic and might trigger the presence to expand. We were still arguing when Dr. Renval found our research. So instead you let us discover it ourselves? We made the information accessible to anyone who looked hard enough. We knew one of your scientists would eventually search the restricted databases. It was a compromise between the different factions in our government. Zavesh wanted to rage at her, but he forced himself to focus. Anger wouldn't save his people. Tell me our options. All of them. Sarah's expression became even more serious. Option 1, immediate retreat. Pull all Cathari forces out of the quiet expanse right now. That might convince the presence to deactivate. Or it might not. We've never seen anyone try to retreat once it begins activation. It could pursue you back to Cathari space. Option 2, stay and endure. We share everything we learned about resisting the presence. You implement our survival techniques, build redundancy into your systems, prepare your people for the cascade. It will be hard. You'll lose people. You'll watch your civilization strain to the breaking point, but you'll have a chance to survive. Option 3, a hybrid approach. You evacuate most of your people back to safe territory, but leave a volunteer force here to face the presence. A smaller population means fewer casualties, but also fewer resources to work with. The success rate would be unpredictable, Zavesh studied her face carefully. What did humanity do when you faced this? We didn't have a choice. We didn't know what was happening until it was too late. By the time we understood, the presence had been attacking us for 200 years. Retreat wasn't an option. We were already home. We could only endure. And how many did you lose? Sarah was quiet for a moment. Exact numbers are impossible to determine from that era. But our historians estimate that the presence, directly and indirectly, killed between 6 and 8 billion humans over the course of the tempering period. Our population dropped to less than 2 billion at the worst point. We almost didn't make it. The number hit Zavesh like a physical blow. Billions. The entire Kethari collective was only 3 billion individuals. There has to be another way, he said desperately. Can't you help us fight it? Your weapons, your technology. The presence can't be fought with weapons, Commander. We tried. We threw everything we had at it once we figured out it existed. Nuclear weapons, antimatter bombs, experimental energy weapons. Nothing worked. The presence isn't a ship or a station or a physical object. It's a field effect, a phenomenon. You can't shoot it. Then how do we stop it? You don't stop it. You survive it. That's the only way. Sarah leaned closer to the screen. But Commander, there's something else you need to understand. The tempering changes you. It changed humanity. We're not the same species we would have been if we'd reached space naturally. What do you mean? Look at us, Commander. Really look at human culture. Our history. Our values. We celebrate persistence above all else. We build redundancy into everything. We plan for disaster because we've learned that disaster is always coming. We don't give up ever because giving up means death. Sarah's voice grew quieter, more intense. The presence didn't just try to kill us. It shaped us, forced us to evolve in specific ways. The humans who survived were the ones who could endure endless setbacks and keep going. The ones who could rebuild after every collapse. The ones who were too stubborn to die. Every civilization that enters this region either dies or becomes like us. That's what happened to the 43 before you. They died. And if you survive, the Kethari will become something different too. Harder, more relentless, more focused on survival at any cost. Zavesh felt a chill run through him. You're saying we'll lose more than just population. We'll lose who we are? I'm saying you'll change. Whether that's a loss or an evolution, I don't know. That's for you to decide. The communication ended, leaving Zavesh alone with impossible decisions. He called an emergency council meeting, transmitting all the data to the collective's government back home. The response came after 3 days of frantic debate among the Kethari leadership. They were divided. Some demanded immediate retreat, willing to risk the presence following them rather than face certain casualties. Others argued for staying and fighting, refusing to abandon the colonies they'd built. A smaller faction wanted to try the hybrid approach, though no one could agree on who would volunteer to stay behind. While the Kethari debated, the failures began. A mining station's life support system failed without explanation. Backup systems engaged, but they were less efficient than they should have been. An agricultural ship discovered that half its seed stock had mysteriously degraded. A communications relay developed interference that technicians couldn't diagnose. Power systems ran at reduced efficiency despite showing no mechanical problems. Each failure was small, explainable, almost ignorable. But Zavesh saw the pattern. The presence was warming up. He sent for Dr. Renville, who had returned from Earth with the human research data. She looked exhausted but determined. Doctor, you've studied the human survival techniques. Can we implement them in time? Some of them, yes. The humans have given us detailed specifications for resistant system architectures. We can retrofit our ships and stations, build redundancy into critical systems, develop backup protocols. But Commander, she hesitated. The technical solutions are only part of it. The humans survived because of their cultural response, their psychology, their refusal to give up. Can the Kethari develop that? I don't know. Our culture values consensus, harmony, efficient resource use. The humans value persistence, individual initiative, redundancy even when it seems wasteful. Those are fundamentally different approaches. We'll have to change how we think, not just how we build. Zavesh looked out at the stars through the observation window. Somewhere out there, the presence was watching, waiting, preparing to test whether the Kethari were worthy of space. Begin implementing the human techniques immediately. All ships, all stations, all colonies. Spare no expense. And Doctor, Start working on a cultural education program. If we need to learn to think like humans to survive, then that's what we'll do." Dr. Renville nodded and left. Zavesh remained at the window, wondering if he was saving his people or transforming them into something unrecognizable. A message alert chimed. Another transmission from Ambassador Chen. "Commander, there's one more thing I need to tell you, about what comes after you survive, about what happens to civilizations that endure the presence." Zavesh opened the transmission, dreading what new horror she would reveal. "We don't just survive it, Commander. We remember it. Every human knows what the presence tried to do to us. We've built our entire civilization around making sure it never succeeds. And now that we know we're not alone, now that we know other species will come to this region, we face a new question." Sarah's face on the screen looked deeply troubled. "Do we warn them? Do we help them? Or do we let nature take its course? Because, Commander, the truth is that the species which survive the presence become very, very good at survival, and the galaxy might not be ready for what that means." 2 months had passed since the Cathari learned the truth. 2 months of frantic preparation, cultural upheaval, and accelerating failures. The cascade had begun in earnest, and every day brought new challenges that tested the limits of Cathari resilience. Fleet Commander Zavesh stood in the Emergency Command Center, watching status reports scroll across multiple screens. A fusion reactor on Colony KE-447 had shut down unexpectedly. A transport ship had lost navigation mid-flight and barely made it to the nearest station. Agricultural systems across 3 colonies were producing yields 30% below projections. Medical equipment was failing more frequently, and diseases that should have been easily treatable were becoming serious problems. The presence was tightening its grip. "Commander, we're receiving distress calls from the mining outpost on KE-551, his communications officer reported. "Their life support is failing and they can't identify the cause. They're requesting immediate evacuation. Dispatch rescue ships. Route them through the redundant flight paths the humans provided." Zavesh marked the incident on his tracking board. 17 major failures today, 23 yesterday. The numbers kept climbing. Dr. Renval entered the command center carrying a datapad filled with implementation reports. "Commander, the retrofit program is 60% complete. We've installed backup systems on all critical infrastructure and trained maintenance teams in the human diagnostic techniques. But we're burning through resources faster than projected. Do we have enough supplies? For now, yes. But if the cascade intensifies at the projected rate..." She didn't need to finish the sentence. They both knew what it meant. Zavesh felt the weight of every decision crushing down on him. 3 weeks ago, the collective's government had finally reached a consensus: stay and endure. The risk of the presence pursuing them back to their homeworlds was too great. They would face this threat here where it was contained, and hope that human knowledge would give them enough of an advantage to survive. Not everyone had agreed with the decision. 2 colony ships had departed, their crews refusing to risk their families. Zavesh hadn't stopped them. Every person had the right to make their own choice about survival, but most had stayed, and now they were all learning what it meant to fight an enemy you couldn't see or touch. "The psychological counseling centers are overwhelmed," Dr. Renval continued. "Many Cathari are struggling to adapt to the uncertainty. Our culture has always emphasized planning and predictable outcomes. Living with constant, inexplicable failures is difficult for us. How are the human advisors helping? They're teaching coping mechanisms that worked for their ancestors. Acceptance of chaos, flexible planning, emotional resilience techniques. But Commander, it's hard. Some of our people are calling it learning to think like prey animals. Always alert, always ready to run or fight." Zavesh grimaced. The cultural transformation was proving as challenging as the technical one. The Cathari had built their civilization on consensus and careful planning. The humans had built theirs on individual initiative and rapid adaptation. Merging those philosophies was painful. An alert flashed across his screen. Ambassador Sarah Chen was requesting a meeting. She'd been stationed on the Eternal Reach for the past month, coordinating the human support effort. Sarah arrived in the command center 10 minutes later, accompanied by a human named Captain James Morrison, who led the technical advisory team. Both looked grave. "Commander, we need to talk about the long-term outlook," Sarah said without preamble. "More bad news? Complicated news. Our sensors show that the presence is responding to your resistance. It's adapting, becoming more aggressive. That's actually a good sign. It means you're being taken seriously as a potential survivor. But it also means the cascade will get worse before it gets better. Captain Morrison pulled up a projection. We estimate another 8 months of intensifying failures before the presence reaches peak intensity. After that, if you're still maintaining spaceflight capability, it should begin to ease off. But those 8 months will be the hardest period. 8 months. Zavesh thought of the casualties they'd already suffered. Hundreds dead, thousands injured, countless lives disrupted. And the worst was still ahead. Can we endure that? The humans did, Sarah said quietly. But I won't lie to you, Commander. You'll lose more people. You'll see colonies fail. You'll face choices about who to save and who to let go. It will test everything you believe about yourselves. Zavesh looked at the status boards, at the long list of failing systems in desperate situations. We've already begun to change. I can see it in my crew. They're becoming harder, more focused on survival, less willing to take risks for others if it means endangering themselves. That's natural, Captain Morrison said. The presence teaches you to prioritize survival. But Commander, you need to be careful. Humanity went too far in some ways. We became so focused on enduring that we sometimes forgot why we were surviving in the first place. It took us a long time to find balance again. How did you do it? Sarah smiled slightly. We met you. Having another species to talk to help, to care about, it reminded us that survival isn't an end in itself. It's a means to something better. An urgent alert interrupted the conversation. The communications officer's voice was sharp with surprise. Commander, we're detecting a new faster-than-light signature. Large vessel, unknown configuration emerging from FTL at the edge of the expanse. It's not Cathari and it's not human. Everyone froze. Zavesh pulled up the sensor data, his heart's pounding. The ship was massive, easily twice the size of the Eternal Reach. Its design was unlike anything in the Cathari or human databases. A third species, Dr. Renval breathed. They're entering the quiet expanse. Zavesh watched the unknown ship begin scanning nearby star systems, clearly searching for habitable worlds. Somewhere in that vessel were beings who had no idea what waited for them in this cursed region of space. No idea that they were sailing into a trap that had killed 43 civilizations. Hail them, Zavesh ordered. Standard diplomatic greeting. We need to warn them. Commander, wait. Sarah's voice was tense. You need to think carefully about this. What are you going to tell them? Zavesh turned to her, confused. The truth. That they need to leave immediately before the presence detects them. And if they ask why, if they demand proof, are you going to tell them about the presence and risk them panicking, risk them spreading information about this region across the galaxy, potentially bringing more species here before we understand how to protect them? Are you suggesting we say nothing? Let them discover it the hard way? I'm suggesting you consider all the implications. Sarah's expression was troubled. Commander, the Cathari haven't made it through yet. You're still in the middle of the cascade. If you divert resources to help these newcomers, it could endanger your own survival. And if you tell them about the presence, they might flee back to their space, carrying the information with them. Within years, a dozen species could be rushing into this region, either to investigate or to claim territory before anyone else. The presence could activate against all of them simultaneously. Zavesh felt sick. So we just watch them fall into the same trap we did? Or we approach carefully, Captain Morrison interjected. Make contact. Assess their technology and culture. Determine if they're capable of surviving before we reveal the full truth. That's what we did with you. Waited to see if you'd figure it out on your own. And let them suffer in ignorance? Better than causing a galactic panic that could get millions killed, Sarah said. Commander, this is the choice survivors of the presence face. We have knowledge that could save lives or destroy them, depending on how we use it. There's no simple answer. Zavesh looked at the screen showing the unknown ship, thinking about the beings aboard. They were explorers, probably excited about discovering new territory. Just like the Cathari had been 6 months ago. Just like the 43 civilizations before them. Send the greeting, he ordered. But keep it vague. Standard diplomatic protocols, nothing about the presence yet. We'll assess them first. As his crew worked to compose the message, Zavesh realized with a chill what was happening. The presence hadn't just tested physical survival. It tested moral survival. What were you willing to do to endure? What were you willing to sacrifice? What were you willing to hide? The humans had survived by becoming relentless, by building their entire civilization around persistence at any cost. Now the Cathari were learning the same lessons, feeling themselves transform into something harder and colder. And here was the ultimate test. Would they help these newcomers at the risk of their own survival? Or would they watch another species suffer to protect themselves? Dr. Renville moved beside him, her voice barely a whisper. Commander, what happened to the others? The 43 civilizations? Did they fail because they couldn't adapt, or because they adapted too much? Because they became so focused on survival that they lost everything that made survival worthwhile? Zevesh had no answer. The unknown ship responded to their greeting, transmitting friendly acknowledgments in a complex language the computers were already beginning to translate. They called themselves the Vorath, and they were pleased to meet new friends in this abundant region of space.